Supreme Court finds the two Montier FM panelists, the host of Pampasu Show and the four owners of the station guilty of contempt amidst tight security. The court has, however, set July 27, 2016 to sentence them. Also, Klottey, Korle, National Democratic Congress parliamentary nominee Dr.Zanetor Rawlings cleared by the Supreme Court to contest the seat. We'll be getting a better understanding of the ruling on these issues, plus some analysis from the media and legal fraternities. This is today's big story. My name is Aisha Brian. At its second hearing of the suit today, the accused persons, who were largely remorseful, apologized for the comments and said they would not recur. During today's hearing, one of the panelists accused of threatening the justices of the Supreme Court, Alisa Nelson, blamed his comments in which he and Godwin Akogan threatened to kill the judges to a disease called Popoblibli, describing it as an unknown disease that takes over a person's body and controls what he says and does. Let's do some analysis now. My colleague Raymond Aqua, who sat through events today in court, joins me in studio now. Good evening, Raymond.
Good evening.
First, let's start with the Montier FM contempt case. How did the judges come about the ruling?
Okay, the first head of the police reading to them the charges against them. So right from the managers, and the judges actually took their time to isolate individuals and read to them so that they can respond individually. It was Ado, Kwame Etua, and also the other two managers, in the case of Harris Akol, who said he was just the owner of the frequency, and the third person in this particular, fourth person in this particular case, lawyer Jambi, all have to be subjected to the same procedure of having to state whether they were guilty or not guilty, or they were liable or not liable to this particular contempt. Luckily, all of them said they were liable, because the indication was that if they had stated the opposite, they would have been subjected to a more rigorous process, which was going to find them liable anyway. So they all said they were liable. Some said they had some form of explanation to do. Others said they had a brief discussion after being liable or dictating that they were liable. Then others said they were just liable with lots of regret. Moving on. The main understanding now is that since they are liable, what would the court do? The explanations came. Eduardo said he was very sorry because as a manager of the place, he should have been more careful in the programming and actually controlled what really was happening on the grounds. But most of the time, he was very much far from actual programming. That is why what happened. He promised that was never going to happen again. That was the tone for virtually every director who took their turn. As Akol said, being somebody who is only in charge of the frequency, he had no knowledge of what programming was happening at the station at all.
At that time.
And this is the right time, he added, for him to now get involved so that he doesn't get himself into trouble because of their activities.
Right.
Now, Mugabe took his turn. He said that he realized he had done so much harm because that same day, his producer became sick, collapsed, and they had to rush him to the hospital. So he was virtually having nobody who actually tap him on the shoulder and say, you are going overboard. And so come in line, or somebody to ask him to toe the right line. That is the reason why what happened that day happened. This he felt was very bad. In fact, he started by giving us his laurels that he has 16 years experience in the profession. He's actually won several awards, and his advocacy for breast cancer has taken him the world over, with recognition that he thinks he doesn't want to dent with this particular decision. Moving on, he actually had more to say about what will be going forward doing to rectify the situation. In fact, he specifically stated that he put together a program on the 29th to beg the court, to praise the court, so that they will make amends. And he said that was some form of damage control to make sure that the right thing is done at the end of the day. So after all that was said by all the people involved, it was then that Alista came up to make his comment. Alista said, there's some spirit that possesses people. It brings some disease upon them. This particular spirit makes it impossible for you to reason and speak from your rational mind. This is what happened.
Did he have a medical report to confirm this disease he's talking about?
He said it's more like epilepsy. You don't predict it. He has never suffered it before, and he has never made unsavory comments in his 6 years of being on radio. And he's a very fine gentleman, right-thinking member of this society who will not just do harm or say these things. So he wants the court to see the commentary in that light and not presume that he was in his rightful senses when he was making that particular comment. Then Akogan, who had previously said on the 29th was when the court took his stand and said, well, look at what is happening and the kind of information he's been given about what happened on the days before. He's not going to say he was not in the court again. He backtracked and said he was only pleading with the court to tamper justice with mercy.
Wow, interesting events. Were you able to speak with their lawyers, and how are they reacting to the charges leveled against their
of course, their clients? In this particular case, intermittently, when the court went on break, I drew closer to Nana Atudazi and sought to find out from him. Really, Nana, you have been talking about how you think that the media should be sanitized and that they should actually not do anything that will kill the media in a fledgling democracy, so that the sentencing in this case would affect them that much. Do you think it's going to be a heavy sentence? He said he was hopeful that the court will hear his plea and begging, and that at his age, he doesn't find it very comfortable having to go out there begging for people, except he believes that Ghana's media needs some level of protection. The reckless ones should be reined in, but should not be with the sledgehammer killing flies in this case. So what that he was saying was that he hopes the court will listen to their plea and tamper justice with mercy. At least they do not expect custodial sentence, that is being put in prison.
Well, so we're also told that the court premises was filled with there was heavy security presence at the court. And so let's look at the atmosphere. Was there the usual chanting of songs by supporters? Like we witnessed the last time. Interestingly,
this time round, the main entrance to the Supreme Court enclave, not the building itself, before you even enter the Supreme Court yard, that was where supporters were kept. In fact, they were asked to move as far as the Arts Center, so that they'll be far from it. But even from the Arts Center, you could hear the huge chants of Mugabe and Muntie FM being said from that particular end.
Interesting.
At some point in time, it was loud enough to stop proceedings for the judges to ask what is happening, for them to be asked to quieten so that the judge can continue with their commentary.
They didn't get some of them for being contentious?
You could not see them in this place because they are very far from the court. They were actually very far that ideally we're not expecting to hear them. But the chants from out there, I don't know who gave them the indication.
Was very loud.
Was very, very loud. That got the court's attention. But when she was ending her statements and adjourning to the 27th, Justice Sofa Akufu, who was presiding, indicated that they would not entertain the kind of noise and kind of commotion that happened previously. And that the police have been ordered and given the mandate to arrest people and put them before the court if they misbehave.
And so they were not even scared by the police presence?
Of course, probably because they've been moved away. They felt they were too far from the court premise for anything to happen to them. And I'm also told that when they are given indications from within the court that it is going on well some way, somehow, then from outside, they will actually continue the chanting. But you could physically hear, or from that particular distance, the people who are ecstatic, who are jumping around, for whichever reason, shouting the name of Mugabe and also that of Muntie FM.
It's popular indeed. Let's look at the Zanetor Rawlings. The court has given her the go-ahead to contest for the parliamentary seat. How did the court come about this decision?
That is effectively the case. That is, in reality, that is what the court has done. But what the court really said was that it took upon itself the decision to interpret Article 94(1)(a), and when it comes into force, the arguments were that as of the time she was contesting the NDC's primaries, she was not qualified to contest and she could not qualify to go to parliament because she was not a registered voter. This is because the applicants first believe that the NDC has a reference to the constitution in their constitution.
In the NDC
that
constitution.
Says that very good. You should qualify by Article 94(1)(a) before you can actually contest. In this particular case, the Article 94(1)(a) says you should be a Ghanaian, you should be a registered voter too. luckily for Dr. Zanetor, the court ruled that it's true. That's a good criteria.
Right.
But it only comes into effect and can only be enforced when the Electoral Commission has opened its own nomination.
Okay,
and
which hasn't been done yet.
Very good.
Good.
So what the NDC did was an internal arrangement. In fact, the argument of the plaintiff was that how about if between the time she was not registered until the time she got registered, there was a by-election in the constituency? How would she have contested? Exactly. She would have been unqualified to contest it.
Exactly.
But the court said it's the NDC that puts up candidates. They can withdraw, change, amend, and put up any other candidate. In fact, they can put up a candidate for by-elections and put up another candidate for the main elections. So the court ended by saying that the High Court should be minded by its ruling in determining the matter. So the case has been passed back to the High Court, but is obviously, and from all indications, a done deal, because the High Court cannot overturn a decision of the Supreme Court.
Exactly.
The High Court will only take inspiration
from the
Supreme Court. From the Supreme Court.
Well, I guess it was very interesting in court. So the case has been adjourned. When are we going to sit? I mean, the Muntie FM case has been adjourned. When are we likely to go to court again?
July 28th of this month. That is when we are going to hear. So the 28th of this month, the court will reconvene and now give sentencing. Some people are even saying that they may decide to put them in prison, give them a fine, or both, or even decide to say that even though we've actually convicted you of contempt, your sentence is go and do no wrong.
Well, many thanks to Raymond Akwasat through proceedings today. On the phone line is Egbert Fable. He's a private legal practitioner and former editor of the Independence newspaper. Hello, Egbert. Good evening, and thanks for joining us on today's big story. Well, I think our phone lines are not working properly. We'll try and fix them. We'll be back. Okay, I'm told we have Frank Davis on the line. Frank, good evening to you. Thanks for your time on today's big story. Hello, Frank. Hello. I think we lost Frank Davis, who is former president of Greater Accra Ghana Bar Association. Will be back with the interviews. This is today's big story. Welcome back. Now on the phone line is Mr. Egbert Fable. He's a private legal practitioner and former editor of the Independence newspaper. Good evening to you, Egbert. Thanks for your time on today's big story.
Thanks.
Hello, Mr. Fable. You're on today's big story. What do you make of the ruling today on the accused persons in the Muntie FM contempt case?
Well, the contemnors, not the accused persons. Let me say that I was so surprised when the Supreme Court convicted all of them. What the court has done today is to defer sentencing to the 27th of July, and the court has every right to do that. As it is, no one knows what respective sentences they may give to them jointly or severally, and that is to say individually or jointly. So we await the court's final, sentencing orders.
I believe this is setting precedents. I know we've had previous cases of contempt cases by journalists, but going forward, what should guard our statements in the execution of our duties?
I think that one of the, as media persons, one of the first things that we need to be, if you like, advert our minds to when it comes to commenting on matters before court is that when the matter is filed in a registry of a court, that matter in law is said to be sub judice or sub judice, as some people want to pronounce it. From that point, you need to be very careful, use a common sense approach. You don't make a comment that will go to, if you like, say that this person should win that case, or the court should not do this, or the court should do this or that. So it's a common sense. There's no proper checklist for that. You just have to look at yourself and say that what I'm going to say, is it capable of poisoning the streams of justice such that a court can get upset and hold me before it for on contempt of court charges? So it is up to us. I think that we have a certain framework, and we must all be guided by that framework. That look, if you are not sure, don't say, or at most speak to a lawyer before. Let the lawyer, at least educate you as to the extent to which you can go. Nobody is saying that what matter is before court, you cannot talk about it. We talk about matters in court every day. but there's a way to do it. And as media people, we need to be circumspect. The key word is what you are going to say. Is it going to be prejudicial? And prejudicial is not a term of art. It is not only lawyers who can use it. They all use that word in also. Almost every one of us understands the meaning of the word prejudicial. So if what you are going to say will be prejudicial of a court, of a judge, or a party in a matter to the extent that it hinges on the way a court will rule or determine a matter, then you have to be cautious.
The court has adjourned, and so the court is yet to make punishment or pronounce its sanctions against the accused or for the accused persons. What are the sanctions available?
Contempt is of so the punishments are so many, and from where I sit, if, and I'm sure that the lawyers of the accused of the contemnors know it. At this point, the court can come down with a prison sentence. The court can come down with a fine. The court can come down with all kinds of things. All kinds of things as well. But you also, as a contemnor awaiting sentence, you can also do something to mitigate what the court can finally hand down to you. For example, you can go to the court. That is Mugabe and Co. can go to the court right now by motion or an application to say we want to be given an opportunity to purge ourselves of the contempt, so that when the court agrees and accepts that application, for example, I want to go on air, retract and apologize over 10 times and buy a space in a newspaper and publish a full-page apology and retraction and all those things. It is a way of purging yourself of the contempt before the court hands down. And I'm sure that their lawyers, also know this option even better than a lot of us. So maybe they can exercise that option as well.
Away from the Munche FM case, there's another huge case that was ruled today. It's the Dr.Zanetor Rawlings with Honorable Ashite's case in court. The Supreme Court has cleared her. How does this come across to you?
It is a surprise to me at all. You see, all laws are subject to the 1992 Constitution, all laws in the Republic. The NP Constitution, which one party relied on, I believe Honorable Ashite relied on, has certain things which seem to take away from the constitutional right given to Zanetor Rawlings. This one to Article 94, which has laid down, the conditions precedent for becoming an MP. So you cannot go and contract out of a constitutional right, as in the NDC Constitution, even if it's a contract between Zanetor Rawlings and the NDC, that you ought to be a registered voter before you vote. Fine, that is a private thing. But the Constitution has given Zanetor the right to, the conditions upon which you can become MP. That does not include, if you like, being a registered, as in the NDC Constitution. It is just being a registered before you file. You understand? So, as I'm concerned, it is not surprising at all. I think that the Supreme Court has taken a very, if you like, erudite, and straightforward position with respect to interpretation of that issue in relation to Article 94.
Well, many thanks to Mr. Egbert Fable is a private legal practitioner. He's also former editor of the Independence newspaper. We just joined us, been speaking about two major issues that was held today at the Supreme Court. One is the Munche FM contempt case, which saw all the accused persons charged with contempt, but the court is yet to pronounce sanctions against these four accused persons. We've heard from a legal practitioner, and we've heard from a former journalist or a former editor who's saying that he was surprised with the charges or the ruling of the court. Well, we'll wait to see the sanctions that will be leveled against these people. The other is the case of Honorable Ashite versus Dr. Zanetor Rawlings. The Supreme Court has given her the nod to go ahead to contest in the upcoming parliamentary elections. The Supreme Court based its argument on Article 94, and it says that Zanetor Rawlings did no wrong, and that if there are issues, it must be dealt with the party. But if it comes to the national level, Zanetor Rawlings has not done anything that is inconsistent with the spirit and letter of the 1992 Constitution. This is today's big story. We'll take a break. We'll be back. We're trying to get the executive director of the Media Foundation for West Africa, Suleiman Ibrahima. He will also give us his analysis of today's ruling. We'll be back shortly. This is today's big story. Welcome back. Now, if you just joined us, Supreme Court has found the two Munti FM panelists, the host of Pampas Show, and the four owners of the station guilty of contempt amidst tight security at the court. But the court is yet to sentence them. And we've also been discussing the Korle National Democratic Congress parliamentary nominee, Dr.Zanetor Rawlings, who has been cleared by the Supreme Court to contest the seat. We were not able to get Suleiman Ibrahima. Our lines are not working properly. Many thanks for watching. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Good evening.